Every great idea eventually degenerates into hard work. Like,
Hmm.
cool idea, man. Are we going to tactically do something and do it in an excellent way? And if not, what was the point of your good idea? It didn't do anything for the world to have the idea. Now, it's good. Ideas are awesome, right? But ideas implemented are where the value is. And that is where things often break down.
Welcome to the Faith at Work podcast, sponsored by Servant.io. Servant is focused on helping faith organizations maximize their impact with cutting-edge tech. But this show is all about equipping you with wisdom and insights from Christians who are on the front lines of business and technology. I'm your host, Jake Oswald. Let's get into this week's episode. Welcome, everybody. We have Scott Wozniak here with us today. Scott, I had the pleasure of meeting you. This is maybe a year and a half ago, I think, which was great. And I got to see you work a room, do your thing. You're a natural. That was fun.
Thanks, man.
Some of your background, you're a CEO of Swoz Consulting, and what you guys specialize in doing is helping other companies turn customers into Raving fans. Is that right?
Yeah, that's
Excellent.
it.
And you've written a few books, and you're an avid reader. So some of the things I'd like to focus on today are, in addition to what you do, what your expertise is, what your journey has been, because I think your journey is a unique one, and you'll probably be an inspiring model for other people who are Christians and want to work hard and make a difference in the world and could follow in your footsteps that way. So take it from there. Tell us a little bit more about your background and flesh that out for us.
Yeah, Jake, it's a good question because it's been a ride, man. I am way off the original plan. And so I've learned to hold this stuff loosely, but man, it's fun to see how God takes the things that didn't make sense to me back in the day and stacks them to where now it's all coming together. But to actually answer your question, man, my first career was actually as a child actor. Like, I grew up on stage. My mom was a theater director. I did my first adult show role when I was 4 years old. They needed a little kid. I was the kid part. And I did the next one next year and the next year. And then by the time I was 10, I was winning competitions and traveling around. And I joined a couple of music groups. We recorded some albums, did more theater, got on NBC in high school. Like, it was all taking off. And everyone's, you got the gifts, you got to do this. And I was like, oh, okay, let's do it. So I got my college degree in musical theater performance, did some professional work, woke up in my early 20s going, I don't actually want to do this with my life. I liked it. I was getting lead roles. I was starting to get paid well.
What did that
And
feel like?
honestly, yeah, it turned out, okay, I'll say this a lot of times. So the lesson here for life and career, I was just talking to a guy earlier this morning, doing a little kind of a mentoring strategy moment. And I was like, hey, just because you can doesn't mean you should. And I think this is a big, challenging wake up for a lot of folks figuring their life and career out. A lot of us, myself included, just ran down this road because well-meaning people who cared about me were like, look, you have a gift, so you should do this with your gift. And what they pick is the obvious application, but that doesn't have to be the way you apply your gifts. They weren't wrong about some of my gifts. Like you mentioned, I love the work in a room and the creative process and putting teams. A lot of the stuff that made me good at it, I get to use, but I use it in a totally different way. So yeah, if you're good at math, people say you should go into finance. That's one option but there's a whole analytical brain capability that makes you good at math that you can apply in some really creative ways. Don't assume that just because you can do this thing, that should be what you actually pursue. And so, that's a lovely revelation. In the moment, it's terrifying, Jake, because I'm like, what do I do? Like, my whole life, literally since I was 4 years old, has pointed me in this direction. And now I don't want to do it. What do I do with myself? So as a Christian, I was like, I want to make a difference and serve God's causes in the world. So I guess I go into ministry. I'm good on stage. So I started with youth programs and became an associate pastor and worked for sports camps. And I went up to Focus on the Family and did some of their programs and was trying out all these different ways that I could do ministry. And honestly, I worked for some really nice guys who were really bad leaders, like epic fail moments. And I don't mean like it was a little annoying. Like, some of those ministries don't exist today because the leadership was so bad. And I don't mean not immoral, not mean, right? There wasn't illegal. It was micromanagement. One guy couldn't let anyone do anything else. He had to double check. I had one boss who, before we could send an email, he had to read our emails and tell us if he would change the wording in it before we would send it out. A little ridiculous. Or the other boss who wouldn't make a decision. Like, it wasn't just one thing. The guy who's, I don't know, and you figure it out. And we're having a conflict between two departments. You pick. Your job is to tell us what's the vision and what are we doing. And he wouldn't. So the conflict just kept spinning up and it big. I could go on and on. Nice guys, bad leaders. And I was trying to
Mhm.
figure this out. And one of my mentors handed me a business book. And honestly, at first I was like, yeah, I don't do those accounting books. I'm a creative ministry guy. I don't. And the guy, he's like, just read the book, man. And it blew my mind because it finally had words for the stuff I was wrestling with. It was about leadership and systems and strategy. And I was like, oh, you don't have to just like try hard and hope it happens. There's systems to make these things. And it's like my brain lit up. Not only did it solve a big pain in my world, but it created like all this. Oh, I loved learning this way of thinking, the whole strategic process. One of my other principles for those of you who are listening going through this is, man, sometimes it's out of your biggest pain and frustration and hurt that you find some of your biggest purpose.
Hmm.
Man, what if, because here's what happened in the moment, Jake. I'm learning this stuff and I'm getting in there and I'm like, oh my gosh, we don't have to be stuck here. And I'm shaking my fist at God one day, like literally. I'm like, this isn't right. The world's held back for bad leaders and somebody should do something. And I just felt like the Holy Spirit started elbowing me, like, yeah, somebody, Scott, maybe somebody, if only somebody cared enough to do something about helping these guys. And I think that's my calling, man, is to come alongside leaders and help them build the systems and strategies to make their grand visions actually happen. Because I've seen way too many times where your big insight, your big ideas, as I say it now, every great idea eventually degenerates into hard work. Like,
Hmm.
cool idea, man. Are we going to tactically do something and do it in an excellent way? And if not, what was the point of your good idea? It didn't do anything for the world to have the idea. Now, it's good. Ideas are awesome, right? But ideas implemented are where the value is. And that is where things often break down. And so that's who we work with. We work with the visionaries who get it. They want to be awesome. They want to create raving fans and be a legend, and they don't know how. So that's become my life and career. Went back to school, got a master's in business, emphasis in leadership. One of my professors was a consultant and had me start working with him on the side. And then when I graduated, I got hired full time with a consulting agency he was at. And then a little while later, the owner of that agency retired and asked me to take it over. And so I was running this coaching consulting firm, living the dream. And then God still had another left turn for me coming up. It's just, man, if you're not catching on, I've learned the hard way. Whatever my plans are, God usually has a different plan. So hold my plans loosely, open handed rather than grip them really tight. Because not only is his plan different, every single time his plan is better. And more, what I think about this is a tree to tree journey through the forest. So, like, you can't see in a thick forest, you can't see the other side of the forest. And I want God's plan for my life to be this wide open field, maybe with a sidewalk right down the middle, right? Like, you got this. Yes, I can see right where I'm going, the whole road, no problems. And it's more, I'm in a forest and go here. I don't know how to get there. There's all sorts of valleys and cliffs and all this stuff in between. And so it's actually go to that tree. And then you get to the tree and you're like, made it. Now I've arrived at my purpose. And instead, God's, now that you're here and you picked up a few skills, there's a new tree. You couldn't see this tree, the second tree from where you first started, but now you can. I want you to go to that tree. And the first time that happened, I was like, I guess I missed it. Like, so
Hmm.
wrong the first time, right? No, that was God. I was praying and asking his advice. I grew up in a radically awesome Christian home. So I came to the Lord really young and prayed a lot about these decisions. So it wasn't like I wasn't trying to. It was like I'd get there, like, I thought this is what you wanted, God. Actually, now that you're here, go here. Now that you're here, and then the next tree and the next tree. And so I'm just like, hey, whatever tree I'm at now, this is awesome. And I'm going to learn all I can and do as much as I can. But I fully expect at some point, it could be 20 years, right? But it could be 5 years. God will say, and now that you're here, I want you to pivot and maybe take this approach. And so it's super fun. But okay, so this is the next pivot is I think I've arrived, right? Like, I'm the consultant. I'm traveling to
Hmm.
London. I'm working with folks in Singapore and South America and like living the dream, dude. It's awesome. And my friends from high school contact me. So I graduated high school with a guy named Andrew Cathy in the Atlanta area. And Andrew and I played 3 sports together and rode dirt bikes and just good buddies, right? And he happens to be the grandson of the founder of Chick-fil-A. True or
Yeah.
threat. 30-ish years ago, I graduated high school and I'm like, hey, good luck with your little mall restaurant. Hope you make it. Yeah, I think they're gonna make it. They're doing
Looking
okay.
good so far. Yeah.
Yeah, so far. Yeah, they're crushing it. And I left and I was back visiting my family and friends. And the Chick-fil-A guys were like, wait a minute, maybe you should come work for us. And so, long story short, and this is the resist. I'm like, I'm arrived. Like, if I could be real frank, at first I was like, I didn't want to do, I didn't do all this to work at a fast food joint, man. Like,
Yeah.
I'm doing cool consulting. And my wife, I credit her, was like, basically, don't, it's a month. I hadn't even replied to their email. A month had gone by because I'm like, I don't want to be a jerk. And she's, listen, they're your friends. Just have a meeting. Like, you owe it to your friends. And I'm like, you're right. Fine. And then they described the job they want me to do, which leads exactly to the new chapter in my life and all the stuff I'm doing now. So for my friends, and they're like, what do you want? I'm like, I'm not a restaurant guy. So what are we talking about? And now I know a bunch about restaurants, but at the time I didn't know anything. And they're like, no, we have restaurant guys. What we want is something different. We just keep growing so fast. We need someone whose job is to work on the business, not in the business. And so here's what my job ended up being. 50% of the time, travel the world, go inside other companies, learn what the best in the world do. And then the other half, come back, take all that stuff you're learning and turn it into some sort of company upgrade. I bounced around the company, worked with the executive team, the Cathys. It was just like the craziest cool job ever.
That does sound pretty awesome.
And I got to study what the best brands in the world do. I did a little bit of that before, but this is all I did was go learn their systems and building systems, doing all that stuff. Again, I think I've arrived. This is it. I'm doing the crazy stuff. I'm working with my friends. We moved to Atlanta. I'm near my parents. It's all coming together. And then God tells me, I want you to leave Chick-fil-A and go help some of these other companies. And I'm like he kept putting the story, Peter in the boat, get out of the boat. And the disciples are all in the boat. Jesus walking on the water by them. And I keep being like, Lord, it's a good boat here. Look at the cool stuff we're doing, right? Because this is what I discovered. When I got there, it wasn't just a cool job. There's one more layer to this that might be useful for the folks listening and your audience. If you're thinking about lessons from life and career, man, I totally had this narrow view of what it meant to be purposeful and be on mission for God. I'm thinking I've either got to be in an explicit Christian ministry, right? A 501c3 local church, or maybe I could be a consultant to those guys, or maybe I could write books and do stuff that's noble and grand, but come on, fast food, that's not purposeful. And then I get there, and one of the first things I see at the Chick-fil-A headquarters, and it was like, oh, maybe I've been thinking wrong about this. They have this giant plaque out front that says the Chick-fil-A corporate purpose. And the headquarters purpose is this: to glorify God by being a faithful steward of all he's entrusted to us and to have a positive influence on all who come in contact with Chick-fil-A. And honestly, Jake, I was like, yeah, I think I could get behind that.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good purpose. And maybe you are doing noble things. In fact, they went on, as I got into this, like the way they talk about purpose, I think a lot of companies and leaders could learn from this. Like they have this very tactical thing they do. And you're like, oh, that's not the purpose. Hold on. Here's what they say. The root word for restaurant is the same root word as restoration. Like that's just how the English language works, right? The original concept of a restaurant was a place of restoration. So they say that's what we exist to do. We create a little oasis of care. We care for our people, a little safe place in a stressful world where you can come and someone cares about you and you get good food, you can get indulgent food, you can just catch your breath and just have a place where somebody cares. And I think about it and I'm like, actually, that's a pretty noble thing. Oh, you know what a secondary layer of the purpose is? I've heard the people, the leaders, the now retired president of Chick-fil-A, he said all the time to us, I think our core thing we do at the headquarters is we're a leadership development engine. We don't make the chicken here, right? We develop people who develop the systems and processes. We partner with franchisees. We raise up staff. Like we're all about culture and skills and leaders. And when we do leadership stuff right, oh, the chicken stuff happens. And so wait a minute, I'm having a positive influence and creating care and I'm developing leaders. And dude, that's pretty dadgum noble. In fact, I could argue that they are having more impact than the early ministries I was a part of that couldn't figure out how to function well. They had these grand aspirations and they just couldn't figure it out. And Chick-fil-A might actually be impacting more lives for good than these high ideal ministries who never did get their excellence together. Purpose is not limited to a explicit ministry. Sometimes the biggest, most powerful purpose is doing your job with excellence and making that impact life on life to the other people. There's tremendous purpose in our work that we do, and it's not limited just to those guys. So I had to go through this wake up call process. It was a 5-month interview process. It was long.
Wow.
Yeah, 5 months, 17 interviews. They flew me out there. I
Wow.
was living in Atlanta. They flew to meet me one time. It was this whole process trying to land this deal. And some of it was at the executive level, like higher level leadership discussion. They wanted everybody in on it. So I interviewed with tons of different leaders, but some of it was my end. I got to come through this journey of, would I be willing to commit myself and my life to this purpose? And man, I'm so glad that I took that phone call or scheduled that replied to that email, because man, it just took my whole life to the next level. They aren't just smart business people. I met life mentors and some of my best friends. And actually, I was on a call with one of their leaders this morning talking about another project. We're so doing cool stuff. Did that. Then God's asking me to leave this sweet place. And can you see, like, how many times am I like, for the love? I thought I arrived. When do I get to arrive?
Ugh.
And I'm finally at a place in my life where like, maybe I don't arrive. Maybe this is just the next tree. And maybe I ran for almost a decade with Chick-fil-A as a staff guy. Awesome. Sometimes I stay at trees a long time. Right now, I've got my own company, and this is what we did. I left Chick-fil-A for my own company. By the way, the first client to sign me when I left was Chick-fil-A. This is classic God, right? I'm terrified of losing this dream set and relationship and all this stuff. Finally, I give it up to you, Lord. I obey. Get out of the boat. Get out of the boat. And I kept saying, I like the boat. And finally, Jesus, I'll never forget this moment. I'm praying through it, reading the Bible, like really wrestling. What do I do? And God said, it's really clear, Scott. It's me. Like, I kept testing him. Like, no, this is me. I know it. And so the question is, do you want to walk with me or do you want to stay in a comfortable boat? Jake, how do you answer that? Dang it.
You don't have a choice. You don't have much
I'm
of a
going
choice.
to walk with you. Fine. So I tell Chick-fil-A I got to leave. And the first client to sign me was Chick-fil-A. I mean, isn't that so God? Hey, I want you to give this thing up. But I love this thing. Do you trust me? Give this thing up. So you give the thing up. And then once you actually give it up, he gives it right back in a slightly different format. And so I continue to do stuff with Chick-fil-A. Love those guys as a consultant now, not a staff member. And man, God just blew up what we're doing. I've got, I don't know, about 20 folks on staff now. And we run around the world helping people build great organizations, mostly business, but we do have a subset of our folks come out of the ministry world. In fact, I just started talking with a guy yesterday about their church is going through a new strategy process and want to go through some upgrades. And we're going to help them get to the 2.0 level. And yeah, we work with folks like Verizon and Nucor Steel and Chick-fil-A, these big multi-billion-dollar folks. We'll work with churches. We work with startups and a lot of software startups and cool deals. So it's a wonderful, wild ride. Who knows what next is coming, but man, it's really fun to see that God's plans are always different and always better than mine.
Okay, let's imagine you're sitting across from someone who's 26, 25, and they feel like you felt when you were deciding to leave theater, music, acting, performance, like that sort of path.
Yeah.
And you felt this wrestle. For the first time, it was like, I got to do something else. This isn't it. What sort of counsel would you give them, or how would you express how it felt for you so that they go, I'm not crazy?
Yeah. So let's tackle this in two ways because, man, these are critical life moments. Let me talk about what goes on like in the thinking, the framework to look at. And then let's talk about practically what do you do with those ideas? Because spoiler alert, you don't jump off a cliff. You don't have to say, I quit everything. I burn all the boats, burn the bridges, and I'm out. There's a different option. Okay. So the thinking. When I coach, I do executive coaching, and I've been through this conversation, which I'm like, oh, I know. I got an answer, Jake. When we coach people through this, there's three things we want to look at. And you got to imagine three overlapping circles, like the old Venn diagrams from school. So one of them is, what makes me come alive? Like, where am I legitimately lit up? What do I love doing? Where my brain kicks in. I get lost in it for hours because this is so meaningful and engaging to me. And I look up and like, where'd the afternoon go? What makes me come alive? Now, this is important. Not what am I good at? When I do interview questions with folks, when I'm hiring people, one of my questions is, what are you really good at, but it drains you to do? You can do it, but it sucks the life out of you or it bores you. No, I'm not talking about that. It's not what am I skilled at. That's different than what makes me come alive. You might actually be lit up by something you're not yet good at. And you say, oh, I've got taste of this and I would love to do more of it, but I'll make one up. Speaking. I really love speaking. I'm not polished. I don't have a lot of great content, but man, the little bits I've been able to do, I really want to do more of that. Okay. So there might be a journey of learning the skill, but you got to know what I come alive. That might be a part of my plan. So what makes me come alive? And it might be more than one thing. It's a big circle, right? The second one in this diagram here, this framework, is what makes me come alive and what does the world need? Now, let me be specific. What makes the world a better place? Because there's another one that kind of overlaps a little with that, but I'll come back to the third circle. What makes the world a better place is like what breaks my heart? Where are there problems? What's not working? What's missing from the world's picture? Like, man, we really need this. I'll give you a fun example. I love board games. Seriously, I'm a serious board game nerd. And I don't mean like Monopoly and Sorry. Like, sure, I played those when I was a kid. Like, I've gotten deep into the deep strategy games. Like, I've got a small board game. My wife, by the way, would very much disagree that my collection is small. A small collection. Listen, Jake, it's, I don't know, 120, 130. It's
Not small.
piddly, right? Like, just warming up, buddy. Just warming up. Yeah, I've got an entire closet stacked with like shelves that roll in and out because I run out of room. I love me some board games. And I don't think the world needs me to play board games. Maybe somebody else can figure out how to do that. I come alive playing strategy, and these are deep strategy games, right? Like empire builders, complex war games, financial empire, pirate games. I love the pirate games. Think about it. You got your like fleet building where you're upgrading all your technology, putting more guns on your fleets. Then you got to manage the competition of taking out the other pirates in some battles. And there's all these ports and trading, and you got to figure out how to buy low, sell high, and do all this cool stuff. I love this stuff, right? I don't think the world needs that. So I get to do it as a hobby. It's not really what I'm going to do with my life, but there's a clue in there. So what does the world need? Man, you want to, like, my big pain and frustration, you heard it was like, the world has bad leaders who care. These guys wanted to do great stuff and they crashed. But there is, unfortunately, a lot of organizations with well-intentioned leaders who don't know how to systematically make it happen. The gap between my vision and my reality and my actual systems, that's real. So the world has that broken need. There are ways to solve that. My way probably engages the strategic, creative kind of, let's figure out a cool competitive play, and then let's do that. Like, you start seeing, okay, I don't play strategy board games, but maybe I could be a strategy guy for broken organizations, which brings in the third circle. And the third circle is, how do I make money on this? Like, it's real. If you're thinking about a life and career, you've got to think, not just what does the world need, but what does the world need so much that it would pay for it? Like, I can produce so much value in there that it provides enough money that, like, after I help them, they get so much more out of it. They can give me some of that money, right? This is what we do for companies. We help them 10x their customer side, and then we take a small slice of that. And it's, oh yeah, let's do 10. And then they bring us back because they're like, we spent 100, we got 1 million. We should probably do that. Let's do that again.
Repeat. Yeah.
Ding, ding. But you got to figure out how to do something so valuable that they could afford to pay you and it's still good for them. So if you want it to work long-term, it's got to be, how do I make money on this? And that sometimes in the early days would have felt mercenary to me. No, it's not about the money. You just do noble things for God and then it all works. It's actually, here's what that forces you to do. It forces you to get really honest and really like reality test your ideas and say, is this valuable enough? What version of this could I do that makes it so good for the world that I can live off the money that's made from this? Because otherwise you can do noble things that help the world. Honestly, the board games, I could probably say it is entertainment. Entertainment's valuable. I could make a YouTube channel watching me play my board games and talking about them. And it's something I love. And there are people in the world who's interested. I think the world needs more board game time, but it's probably not valuable enough that I could actually live off of that. That's the litmus test is, well, it'd be a fun little hobby, but I don't think I could make the kind of money that would support my family and my life And my board game buying habit, right? Just putting YouTube videos. I'd have to do more. Now, maybe someone else is called to that and they can figure out how to build an empire and do stuff I can't. But it's this triangle of things. What makes me come alive? What does the world really need? And can I make enough money on it? And those forcing functions, you find something in the middle there where you're like, that again, now, at least for the next season, right? You've heard my journey. Maybe not for the rest of my life, but for the next several years or so, however long God calls me, that's a way I could have a blast and make a difference in the world. So that's the framework. And there's a lot of discovery and discussion and trial and error and trying to figure out. It often feels like a Polaroid picture. You remember the old Polaroids they
Yeah.
print out and you got to shake them. Actually, I don't think you have to shake them, Jake. I think you just shake
Just
them. We're impatient, right? I don't know if it does any good, but everyone's like blowing on it.
yeah.
I don't think it does any good. But you do whatever you need to do because what starts is fuzzy and you start to see blobs and you see two blobs and then they start to define. You're like, actually, it's two guys. And then you're like, wait, that's Jake and Scott. That's what the process is like. Like it starts rough and then you're like, it's this, it's not that. And then you get, the more work you do, the more refined until you finally have a crystal clear picture of, oh, this is what's the next chapter look like. So it's not a single moment, it's process, which is a good segue into the practical side of this. Don't jump off a cliff. You don't immediately quit your job and say, screw it, I'm all in. I'm putting up my blog and trusting God to figure like there's actually a tremendous amount of the process and the journey is like, just go try it. Run some experiments. I'm a huge fan of the side gig scenario, right? Like I got my day job and it's paying the bills and I'm also learning stuff there. Hopefully you picked a job that pushes you a little bit. Let me start trying some stuff on the side. So when I was in theater and thinking about what was next, I started working with a youth ministry and I was a part-time youth pastor. Full-time doing all this other theater stuff, but part-time, it's a small church. So they couldn't afford a full-time guy anyway. It worked out great. And I got to test it. And I started realizing at the end of that first 9 months or so, came to the end of that calendar year. And I was like, I would rather be here than back over there. Uh-oh, this is the wake-up calls. Oh no, maybe I should do more of this than that. Like I came alive here in a way I never have over there. And so I started sliding. Let me try it one more, do a little more. And then I was like, okay, when I finally leapt into full-time ministry, I'd already been doing it part-time for years. Similar deal. When I started the leadership stuff on the side, I started getting a coaching certification, going to classes and conferences. And I started trying to work with leaders on the side while keeping my day job doing ministry. And then I was like, okay, it's time to get serious. And that's when I switched over to that coaching consulting firm. Now, the Chick-fil-A one was a leap. So sometimes you can't halfway, right? The opportunity's all in. But that's why I spent 5 months. I went talk to people who made the leap. What was it like for you? And how did this work? And tell me what the day, I went and shadowed people for a time. I didn't just take a wild swing. Now, see, at that point, I had a family. I had 2 kids. I now have 4, but we had 2 at the time.
Wow.
We had just bought a house and I was living out of state, like not in the same state, living 600-700 miles away from where Chick-fil-A was. And so, man, maybe this is a big switch. Let's make sure you don't go nuts. Do it on the side, get taste tests, try it out, walk a day in life of, because you'll discover when you do a real life test before you make the leap, you'll discover a lot. Not only do you want to do it, you'll discover what you need to learn to get ready. Sometimes it took me a long while because I got there, tried it, and realized I do love it, but I'm not skilled enough yet. I got to go back and get some training. So this is what happened to me. The leadership development strategy stuff. I shake my fists. God says, you should do this. I'm like, okay, I think this is my life path. I start trying to do some coaching and stuff on the side. And I quickly realized I need to learn more. So in that journey, I would say within 6 months, I had applied to a grad school to go get a master's in business. Because I said, if I'm really going to do this at the next level, there's a gap between where I am and where I need to be skill-wise. I got to go get some skills. And took 2 years, went to grad school. I wouldn't have known that if I hadn't tried it. There's a lot of people who just put their shingle up and be like, hey, I'm a leadership consultant. And they haven't gone and built the skills yet. Maybe one of the things that worked for me at Chick-fil-A was I didn't know I was doing this, but like the ability for me to play at the level I am now totally is only possible because I went and worked for Chick-fil-A and serving them and their mission took me and my life to the next level. Like they just played at a world. I thought I was cool, world-class consultant. And then I saw what world-class actually looks like, Jake. And not that those other guys were bad, but Chick-fil-A
Next
is
level.
top tier, man. And I was like, oh, that's top tier. Okay. And it was only after truly learning that I was able to step out and feel like, okay, I could do this on my own and do it at a top tier level. So do stuff in parallel. Man, if it's really something that makes you come alive, you'll find a way, and it'll even give you energy to add this little side gig to your time. And I did some of this with small children while trying to build a career at a Fortune 100 company and all this crazy stuff. It's possible. I mean, it's baby side gig stuff at times, but you can run experiments before you just push all the chips and go all in.
Have you ever worked with somebody through your current gig at Swoz who was late in their career, second half, let's say at least 45, thought that they were locked in with their path? You start having these conversations and they go light bulb and their path changes. They do the three circle Venn diagram. Can you tell us some stories?
Oh,
Replace
man.
names if you have to, but
Yeah. Yes, I'll give you a few. There was a highly successful executive in a large famous company that I won't name because, yeah, I don't want to cast aspersions on the company. She loved the people at her main job, but she'd hit the glass ceiling in that organization. They weren't mad at her, but her boss was like only a little bit older than her and planned to be there for another 15,
sure.
20 years. That person's boss was about the same age and planned to be there for the next 15 or so years. And they were like, we love you, but there's just nowhere to go.
Mm-hmm.
There's no promotions for you. But she said, I got a lot more horsepower. What do I
Mm-hmm.
do? Do I coast or do I start shifting? And she started doing side stuff, having this conversation, and woke up to a whole new possibility. And man, you want to talk about golden handcuffs. It was crazy. And so she left, went to a smaller company. That smaller company turned out to be a rocket ship. She's the COO of that company. So it was on the leadership team and her, like top three folks on the company. And that company is now becoming an international rocket ship that is on path to catch the first company. And she's
Wow.
in it. And we talked through this journey. I remember sitting with her, which she's wrestling through. There's nothing wrong with my existing job and company. I'm paid well. I like these people. I could just enjoy my life here. And I love the mission. And I don't want them to feel like I'm rejecting them because I'm walking away. And I was like, great. But one of the metrics to think about this is, are you still growing? And I think we're fully alive when we're growing. And if you
Hmm.
are in a stagnant place, okay, biblically, one of the parables that most speaks to this situation is the parable of the talents. You might remember this. Jesus tells the story a couple different times, actually. It's such a big story for him. So the story goes like this. I'm going to give you the Scott Wozniak translation, right? The master had three servants. He went away for long business and he took a bunch of money and he gave 10 talents to one servant, 5 talents to another, and 1 talent to the third guy. And he says, go invest these, make them profitable. I'll come back and see how you guys did. So he goes away, he comes back, and the guy with 10 took that 10 and turned him into 10 more, 20 total, right? The guy with 5, he made another 5. But the guy with 1 said, yeah, I buried it in the ground. I knew you were a guy who hated losing things and I didn't want to get in trouble. So I kept it safe. Here's your 1 back. And the guy's response was to the 10, well done. Here's even more responsibility. Same to the 5, well done. He's even more. And to the 1, it's like really dramatic language. You wicked and evil servant, you'll be cast out where there's gnashing of teeth. It's like harsh stuff. And he's like, why didn't you even put it in a bank and get interest? Now, the moral of the story is, I think when God gives us our talents and our abilities, if you're listening to this, you're probably one of the high talent people. You got drive and interest, and you're probably in a place in your life where you lean into tech and you get to work with the coolest, fastest growing thing in human business culture history. Like what is happening in digital world right now is crazy. Like it's sci-fi that the sci-fi guys didn't dream of 50 years ago. We get so much blessing and opportunity. And if you are coasting, I'll tell you what my mentors told me. They're like, Scott, you're a 10 talent guy, probably like you are. And if you're using your 10 talents, you could probably take your 10 and go make 5 with it. And everybody would pat you on the back because you're still making a lot of cool stuff in the world. but you and God would know when it comes down to it, I didn't give you 10 so you could make 5 and coast. Go push what's possible. And so this was where she was at, was like, this doesn't require all of my abilities and passion. And I've got a lot of years left in my life. I think she had just turned 50. So it was this wake up milestone birthday. Is this it? Is this what I'm doing for the rest of my life? And okay, so I would just say I checked in with her just like a month ago. No, 2 weeks ago, we were emailing. And this is the best thing. She's been there about a year and a half now. No, 2.5 years. 2.5 years. It's been a cool ride. But this is the best thing. I have grown so much. It's made me a better person at home. It's made me closer to God in my faith. And look at the company growth. I am so glad I left the comfort zone and pushed myself out into the growth zone.
It's cool.
So, huge deal, man.
Even at 50.
Yeah, it's not time, dude. It's never too late. You're not done yet, man. Why not push this? In fact, I'm going to go nuts for you, Jake. Okay.
Please do.
Let me tell you my crazy life goal. This is a wild, unrealistic goal. I don't know. I actually think I might pull this off, but be prepared. It's ridiculous. My goal is to live to be 126. Actually, the real goal is to the day after I turn 126, I'm able to do something that blesses somebody and makes the world a better place. Like, I'm not just there. I am still contributing and blessing people's lives in some meaningful way. Like my 3 diagrams, I'm still doing that the day after I turn 126. So throw that. I'm going to have an epic party. You're invited, by the way. Epic birthday.
Oh, if you make it, and I make it, I will be there.
That's the challenge, man. Come on, come with me. So let's say we make it, please Jesus. Epic party. And then the next day I can do at least one more thing to make somebody's life better. So I got to survive the party. But now, why am I saying that crazy goal? Partly, I've got good genes. My grandparents they lived to their 90s, no major health issues. My parents are still great. I also live pretty healthy myself. Also, a lot of that is science. I probably could get to the 90s, no problem. I'd say no problem with a good, healthy lifestyle. And I'm really banking on health science to keep having crazy breakthroughs. So I might not make it to 126. So if I only make it to 96 or 106, I'll still be happy. So why do I pick that goal? And this comes back to this whole, like, you're 50, maybe it's over. Hold on. If you start thinking, gosh, it's possible, whatever you thought your death time would be. And it's funny, we have this conversation. You'll ask, let me put you on the spot. Off your gut, before you heard from me, what would you have expected? Like, I'll probably die around
85.
What? Yeah, most people will say this, 85. That's normal. That's statistic. It's a little above average, but good, right? You should add at least 20 years to that, thanks to health science these days. If you are in a first world country and access to first world medicine, oh man, for guys our age and younger, yeah, add 20 years to what your grandparents and parents will have to deal with. You just have more options. Crazy stuff's happening. That's a whole other podcast. But let's say I only make it to 100. Here's the shift. Here's why this matters to me. Because it frames what I'm doing in my life in a much longer time frame. If you're 50 and your goal's 100, like, you're not even my crazy 126. Like, Jake, you just bump it to 100 and you get to 50, and everyone else who's 50 is, yeah, I guess I got 10, maybe 15 more years. Then I hit retirement and I kind of wind down. Like, you're half done, dude. You got 50 more years to show up on the planet. You better not be like sitting and golfing for 50 years. Golf's fun, but you got a lot more capacity in you than this. So if you're young and trying to figure it out, I'd say keep working until you find the center of the bullseye. And if you're older, dude, take your years that you expected, add 20 to 25 years to that, and then have an honest conversation and say, would I want to do this for the next 40, 50 years? If not, man, you got decades to go figure something new out. It's not too late. It's never too late.
This is reminding me of something that I've seen you say and seen on your website and stuff. And it might be a conversation shift, but a nice segue. The phrase, play the long game.
Yes.
Where did that come from, and what does that mean?
It's this exact mindset. I'm interested in the end, how I finish, not how I start. And there's a lot of how do you be successful in life advice that is very short-term and really bad for you long-term. Okay, listen, let's make a melodramatic extreme example of this, right? If you need to maximize your performance for the next, 4 hours, you should crank some serious caffeine. In fact, maybe we should get some cocaine up in here,
Yeah.
right? Like you will be lit and you will be ready to rock and your performance will be crazy. Physical performance, we should get you some steroids, right? Some
Yeah.
anabolic steroids. We should pump you up like crazy. This is going to be awesome. But if you actually want to make it to 85, 105, right? Pick your number. You should probably not do either of those things. The short-term spike's awesome and the long-term consequences suck. Like they will wreck you. And that's how a lot of people are building their life in their company. I'll give you a life example. It's like, I just need the money from this one thing and I can't switch. Whoa, whoa, whoa. You're going to have so much more life impact, satisfaction, and even money if you find your sweet spot. And it is worth some of the learning curve to go through a transition window to get into your zone and do the thing you were made to do. Yeah, you might lose a little money in the short term while you pay to go back to school. Like in my case, right? Like master's school was not cheap. I literally just finished paying off the student loans. So yeah, that's that price I paid literally and has paid off 100-fold. You want to think of like business strategy? I'll give you another quick one. Discounts. When you run coupons, discount campaigns, buy one, get ones, you'll get a lot of attention and people will come buy all your stuff. And you will have taught all those people not to trust your price and your quality. Once people buy at a discount, they can't feel good paying full price again. Like it's how psychology works, right? Like we love discounts so much, we no longer believe the real price is the real price. We're like, yeah, but I got a discount. So next time I still want a discount. And so if you need cash in the next 90 days, run a bunch of coupons. But if you want profit long-term, then you should build quality and build the kind of trust that says, man, we're getting this at the deal. Apple is not winning us on their iPhones and their iPads by telling us we got a new buy one, get one cheap. Dude, they are expensive and people line up to get them. Back in the early days, Apple was a small slice of the market, very small slice. And they just were quality. And over time, they built and built until they're the big beast.
Played the long game.
Yes, they played the long game. And so this is a huge passion of mine for my own self and trying to help other people figure this out. Zoom out. What's the end goal? And then how do you start there and work backwards to win that game? Because I've seen way too many people like spike and crash. I give a real personal one for like individuals. Some of the most productive, successful people right now, today, are that way because deep down they're driven by anxiety, insecurity, and desperation. It works really well, Jake, until all of a sudden it doesn't. I've seen this. I'm the coach who's often brought in to help with the fallout of I was grinding and then I hit that limit and I crashed and the whole thing burned down and now I don't know what to do. Yep, not playing the long game, man. There's a lot of things you can do to crank up short-term results that will kill you in the long term. Don't do that. Build a compounding engine. And by the end, you'll be way outperforming everyone else who is desperate at the beginning.
What sort of practices do you have as a family man and as a Christian to maintain that? Everybody has their own, but what are yours?
Yeah, let me start with a super obvious one that half of you are going to roll your eyes and skip this, but it's probably what you need to hear most. I got in shape physically, and I wasn't before. So I grew up as an athlete. On the side, like I was a theater guy and my other brothers were sports, hardcore. One of my brothers went pro, played soccer in Europe. He's a head coach of a soccer team now. So like we were big into sports. So I was on the teams, but it wasn't my main jam. So when I went to college, I was like, yeah, I'm done. I'm not on the teams anymore. And I kept eating like I was a hardcore athlete and I stopped exercising. So weirdest thing, Jake, what happened? It's a medical mystery. I gained 55 pounds. I lost a lot of energy. Like it was a slide, but I had a wake up call one moment. And it's like, if I'm going to make this, and it was not athletic performance that got me fired up about that. It was being a father. That's why you ask, play the long game. The long game for me includes my kids. That's my number one ministry and calling is to pour into them. And my wife, that's my first ministry, that family. And I literally was like falling asleep at the end of like 8, 9 o'clock, trying to tuck my kids into bed. And I'm falling asleep instead of them because my body was out of whack. It's a whole long story. My sleep patterns got off. I was coping with lack of sleep with extra ice cream. It's funny how that didn't actually help. My nightly bowl of ice cream, not exaggerating, Jake, nightly bowl of, and I've done the math, by the way, since then. You can do calorie trackers. It was a 2,200 calorie bowl of ice cream that I had every single night.
Wow.
top of my meals. I still ate meals, man. Yeah, it wasn't good.
2,200.
Yeah, yeah. Dude, it was also very good ice cream. If you want to talk ice cream sundaes, I could nerd
You know
out
your
on the
stuff.
details. Like I've spent years perfecting that. But yeah, it was like, I want to be the kind of dad that can be present for my kids. And I don't mean in some abstract way. Like I'm actually awake when they want me at bedtime. I need to figure this out. And this slow, steady, one little change at a time of getting my body's energy back allowed me to show up. When I do executive coaching, one of the first things we talk about, it's not grand strategy, it's not people skills, it's not even spiritual stuff. I ask how their sleep is. Because if you're not sleeping well, guess what? It's hard to be intellectually smart. It's hard to be emotionally calm and kind. Your memory's worse. You'll literally gain weight just by not having enough sleep.
Hmm.
It's massive, the impact of sleep. So get your body healthy. I don't mean you have to go be an athlete. Sleep well. Figure out how to not have a nightly bowl of ice cream. Cope another way, man. I was coping with a stressful scenario with ice cream. So getting my health in place unlocked the energy for me to do the other stuff I'm talking about. And so a lot of people skip this and they try to do these hard emotional strategic things and they just don't physically have the energy for it. Get your body healthy. And it might take years and to get that to a decent place. And that unlocks the possible. So the next step, of course, is a regular rhythm of talking with God. I read through the Bible, I pray, I journal on Sunday mornings. I go through that whole process. And so there's a lot of internal, I just need to feed good stuff and then sit and listen and let God
Hmm.
actually talk to me. That's why it's actually talking to him and with him. It's not just memorizing biblical facts. And then I have accountability partners. I've got a small group of guys that we've been running together for about a decade now. We get together monthly and challenge each other. I get meet one-on-one and then we do like a group retreat every year to process.
Wow.
And so I've got this community of other Christian men who are challenging me, who know my world and vice versa. And all of that is to try to keep the foundation healthy. Dude, I do crazy stuff. I'll give you one little nugget in this. Trying to make sure that I stay healthy and don't lose sight of what matters most. Every year, at the end of the year, I give my wife a survey and ask her to rate me on 8
Ooh.
dimensions on how am I doing as a husband. And I make her write numbers down and then give me specifics. Yeah, that's not a casually fun thing. Tell me all the ways I'm doing this wrong. Like I want to give her a survey and tell me my favorite stuff, right? Tell me how I was good this year. No, tell me what I need to get better at. And then we have a conversation. Okay, you said this. And then we come to an agreement. What would better look like? But that's the kind of stuff where I'm like, I'm not hoping my family and my wife and I are good. I'm not hoping that thing. I track it, I discuss it, I have people that hold me accountable to it. If you want to be healthy on the fundamentals, that's the first thing I would say. Define it and get people to help you do it. It changes everything else if you've got a good foundational base.
Hmm. This thing you mentioned, group of men that are your accountability partners, and you have regular meetings and then annual retreats. This is a common thread I've seen among really outstanding men,
Mm.
high performers, guys who are locked in and are good family men, the whole nine. So tell us what that looks like specifically. How many guys are involved? What are some things that you'd say you should do it this way? You shouldn't do it that way.
Sure. Yeah, huge. It's one of the few things that have had the biggest impact on my life is finding real partnerships like this. Okay, so I'll tell you a little what it is, and then we'll go back and talk a little bit what we've learned doing it. So there's 4 of us, me and 3 others in a core group, and then I have an extended group of people that I'm also starting to loop into this as well because I've been doing it long enough. It started like this. I do my own life planning process, right? Sit down at the end of the year and say, who do I want to be? What is God saying? What are my business plans? This is when I would take my wife's input and be like, how am I going to get better? And this whole process of just putting together what life am I trying to build here? And then how am I going to actually live that out this year? What does that tactically look like? I started doing that on my own and started doing that. I'm doing that 20 plus years, 25 years now. And I ran across some other guys that good buddies, great friends. And it came up, my life planning. Oh, I do that too. Okay, that's interesting. Let's swap notes. And then that got interesting. And then one guy was like, let's get together. And I'm like, it's a great idea. So we got together for an afternoon and we swapped. We like, here's my life plan. Well, you show me yours and let's talk about it and push on it. And oh, I want to read that book too. I'm going to write that down. And so cool stuff, right? That was even better than I thought it was. And so I started doing that again. Then I met another guy and I was like, dude, we should do that too. And then at some point I was like, I need to get all these guys together. If just for my schedule, I can't keep having 4 all day life plan meetings. Like, I think they would love each other. So let's connect these guys and see if they could click. And we did a retreat weekend where all of us got together, and it was so phenomenal.
Hmm.
We all took half a day and processed our life plan in front of the other guys and went through it. And man, it just really elevated our lives, but like, it elevated the tactics we then wanted to do. It also elevated our relationship. And so it was like super fun and super productive. So all that to say, we said we need to start talking more. So then that leads to, we shouldn't just wait till next year and hope your life plan works. Like, I want to check in on that thing. You said that's your big thing this year. So what if we get together again? And so now here's what it's evolved to. We have once a month, we hop on a quick Zoom call. We don't all live in the same state. We live scattered around the country, and we hop on Zoom and we check in personally, talk about our plan progress, hang out for an hour. It's super fun. I also do one-on-one calls with each of these guys on a regular basis to talk more deeply about their life. And we're all cool, creative business guys. So we've done projects together and family vacations together. And so we plan all that stuff in our one-on-ones. And then again, once a year, we get together and do our annual retreat. So we have this grand plan and this ongoing little conversations to say, how you doing? Are you still on track? Because some parts of the plan always change halfway through the year. So then we had more guys come to us and say, man, I really want to do this. Like, what else? Can you teach me more about that? And so we started hosting events where we brought a larger group of guys together and said, hey, let's all go through this kind of as a big group process. And so that's the final evolution, is now we do pretty epic, cool group stuff. In fact, Ben Elmore, who works with you at Servant, right? Ben and I, last year, we went to Costa Rica with a large group of guys, got a beachside villa, worked on our life plans, rode ATVs, and did serious business, man. Yeah, we had a blast, but we also worked on life plans and swapped business ideas. And so part of how you and I are here today is like, Ben and I built that kind of relationship and said, wait, I'm doing a podcast and you're doing a podcast. We should probably swap each other's stuff and help each other grow. Oh, that's a great idea. Let's do that. And so I say all that to say it's the goal is not to do business together. The goal is to work on our lives together. But what do you know? There's enough overlap in these guys doing cool things that when I want to do creative, cool stuff, guess who I come to first, right? When I need digital expertise, guess where I go first? So it's got lots of side benefits, but the main thing is let's just work on our life plans together. So going to Iceland this year. That's the plan for this one. That's not been to Iceland. So that'll be a new location for us, and it's going to be pretty epic. But yeah, it's fun. Don't let the location distract you. I would say you could do, the very first time I did this, we went to a library and we checked out one of their study rooms for free because I didn't have the money I have back then. I didn't have as much. We didn't know if this was worth a major investment. Let's just meet at the library. We'll hang out for a day and see if this works. It was still worth doing and still made a big difference in my life. I'm at a place now where I can afford to do it in Iceland, but it's not Iceland. It's the conversation. Iceland's just the excuse to get us all in the room and have those kind of conversations. Find somebody who is in a similar journey as you, not identical, but similar enough that you can really challenge and encourage each other, and then just start growing together. And I would say it compounds over time. Like, it was good year 1. Year 10, when we have all that history of life together, the way we're able to speak into each other's plans, phenomenal. Like, literally changes some parts of my life where I'm like, oh, I'm going to do it this way now. And I run a whole different path because of the conversations we have.
That's cool. What about the books that you've written? Have the books come out of or been influenced by this group?
Yeah, very much. So the book was around for the last 2. I've written 4. I'm like going through the journey here. So I've written 4 books. The first 2 I wrote before I was a part of this group many years back, but the last 2 very much. On a small level, I would say the guys were a part of the feedback. There's a beta reader. If you're a writer, we have a beta group and you give them like the rough drafts and they give you feedback and react to it. So those were that. But on a more high level, this is the kind of stuff these guys are for. Should I write this book? Should it be about this or that? The way God's wired me is I've got ideas, man. I always have more ideas. That's not my problem. It's deciding which of my ideas to act on. Like I've always got more shiny objects that are like, this could be cool. And this could Focus, man. They're constantly telling me, Scott, you got to focus. You can't do it all. Is it this or is it that? What are we doing? And so, should I even write the book? And then helping me stay focused and not get distracted. That's the conversation I have with these guys. And so, the last book that
Hmm.
came out it's been my most successful yet, hit #1 on Amazon in the customer category. Super fun. I start and then I wind. And they actually had a hard challenge with me. It's like, Scott, you've been writing that book for 3 years. It ended up being 5.5 years before it was published. So 3 years into it, they're like, every year you say you're writing the book this year. Are you really writing the book this
Hmm.
year? Like, really? You're doing this or not? Let's have a conversation. And they held my feet to the fire. And I'm like, yeah, I make progress. And they're like, are you actually going to write the book this year? What has to change on because the old plan's not getting it done. So what's new and different? And I had a wake up call that I may never finish this book if I don't actually move it to the top of the priority list. And they pushed me
Hmm.
and they pushed me. And I really made the time and I carved out. It was disruptive to my life and scenario. Like, I had to cancel some stuff I was a part of to make time to really write the book. I wouldn't have done it. I wouldn't have finished the book. Maybe I'd still be working on it today without those guys challenging me. Now,
Hmm.
interestingly, this year in our life planning process that we just finished, I laid out another book idea, and the conclusion was you shouldn't write that book. Like, you still have not finished fully fleshing out all the business and teams and stuff that came out of that book. There's the demand list for people who want to get in is still so big. Like, you should finish building that team out before you go create another product and cool ideas. I'm going to have an outline for another book, Jake. I think it's going to be awesome. And they're like, yeah.
Hmm.
And you still haven't stewarded this thing. When this thing is running and humming and not underutilized, then why don't you start a new thing? And I was like, that's actually a fair point. So
Hmm.
I'm not writing a book this year. I'm finishing building out that team. Hopefully it'll take a year, maybe more. But like, until that thing hits certain markers we set that we think, okay, it's a fully functioning, fully fleshed out process that doesn't need me, then I'm not going to move on to another big giant product like that. So that's the
Hmm.
level of discussion these guys and I are having is, should I even do this thing? Oh yeah. And then I send them pages and they react to the book and say, rewrite that paragraph. But what's
Hmm.
more valuable is the, are you doing this or not conversation.
Okay. One more segue for you. You mentioned that you're the sort of guy who's always got ideas.
Sure.
I want to know what sort of things are you thinking about? What in the world, I mean, like in the actual world,
Yeah.
um, is occupying your brain space? What's interesting to you in the last year? It can have something to do with the church broadly,
Yeah.
or about technology, or work, or culture, or anything at all.
Man, a lot of things. You mentioned I'm a big reader. I read a
Hmm.
ton. Little sidebar. I discovered audiobooks, which is awesome. You can play them in the background while you're doing other things like the laundry or waiting in line at the airport. I do a lot of travel. And then I discovered that you can increase your playback speed. And so I can crank through, and it took me years to train my brain to listen faster, but I got to where I can listen at pretty fast speed. And so,
What's your
and I
top speed
understand it.
right now?
So I listen at 3.5 times speed. So
Wow.
it's pretty fast.
I have to stop you here. Quick side story. Good friend of mine worked at a disabilities company for basically retrofitting websites for the blind. And
Mm,
their whole team was a bunch of blind developers. And he talked about how they all, because their whole life, everything is listening rather than reading, and their speeds are pretty much all above 4 or 5x. Some
yes.
even
Yes.
higher. Crazy that you can get there.
No,
You can train it.
that's what people told me about. And they're like, listen, the brain is capable of listening much faster than most of us realize. And
Hmm.
so, dude, you're sandbagging this. Like, come on, push yourself. And so, yeah, I'm at 3.5 because the app I use for audiobooks doesn't go any higher. I would like to go higher, but it doesn't do it. Now, I would have to train myself. 3.5 is comfy-ish. I push it, but I can understand and process and I dialogue with it. But if I could go to 4 or 5, I would probably take me a year or 3 to get there. But I would be delighted if Audible is my Audible. If you're listening to this, please up that level. Come on, man. I'll buy more books from you. So I listen to I'm allowed to satisfy a wide range of curiosity. That's why I went on the book tangent. It's because, like, actually, I read a ton of books. And so that beauty of that is I'm interested in that. Let me read a book on it. Let me read a book on it. I typically read over 200 books a year with this pace. So I'll give you a few of the ones that are most interesting to me lately. That's really fascinating. I have been studying, you get real business nerd for a minute. I've been studying a lot lately on the latest generation of what business sales looks like. And it's not at all what most people think. It's a very interesting twist on the best business partners these days have a surprising insight that they teach, and they do this content cultivation where they teach content, create some really cool stuff, and then they actually challenge. And I think you're wrong and you're not doing this right. Challenging. Dude, I have been the book, one of these books had a wake up call moment for me. They said the lowest performing business sales guys these days are the soft relationship builders who put no pressure on everybody and just have warm relationships. And frankly, that's what I have been doing. Like, huh, huh. Now, it's not that you stop having great relationships. They're like, if you don't challenge them, you're not actually serving them. You're just accommodating. But like real service is to say, I know you want to buy X. You shouldn't. You need to buy Y. Here's why. And to teach them and to create a kind of poke and prod out of a good heart kind of way of serving your customers. That's really got me thinking about how people change and what the change process is like. And I'm reading a lot of psychology on human change and why would we receive a challenge and conflict from one person but not another? Because all of us, it's the weirdest thing. We say people don't change, but all of us have a life full of growth and change. None of us are the same as where we are when we were kids. So some things change us. Why? What things work, what things don't. And so that's a lifelong passion. And I'm really digging into that, into the business context, the sales specific. How do you get company leaders to change their approach and buy something they weren't even considering before because now they have a new frame for it? And so like how to be a challenger, not just an accommodator. That's a very interesting posture that I'm playing with. On the other end of totally unrelated fun stuff to explore, I've been really fascinated with what's happening in AI. Specifically, I'm super into the like the mind link neuronet kind of crazy stuff, right? Where you're talking about brain enhancements and brain chemicals. And then you get into the deep like life sciences stuff, because this is where it's science and tech. This is where I'm like, hey, I'm going to live to 126. I'm actually part of a program where we do blood draws every 90 days, check like 49 different things, tweak our results, talk about the latest tech and breakthroughs in hormone balancing and all this stuff. And really, when you start putting, I wear like, I've done this before, I'll probably do it again. You put a continuous blood glucose monitor on. Typically, those are for people with diabetes. I don't have diabetes, but you know what you can do is you can test different foods to see your unique glycemic reaction to that and say, hey, my insulin's doing this when I eat this food versus that food. And so like I play with my numbers and like the tech life sciences overlap, super fun world to play with. And so that's a zone that I'm really excited about. And then, man, I'm really passionate about what's happening in India in the world today.
Why India?
Okay, if you want to look at the future of the world, like macro future, way zoom out, right? India is the waking giant of the planet. Population wise, like we typically talk about China as the big pop. No, India now has passed China for the largest population. China, sadly, to their one child policy and some of the communist system they have set up, the population not only plateaued, but it started declining. And they're still giant. You should pay attention to China if you want to see the world. They're probably more belligerent than India in terms of risk at nationalism and regression. But India is not only fast growing in that its population is still rising, but if you want to look at one of the fastest growing economies in the world where cool new stuff is breaking out and there's crazy innovation, new technologies, new industries, India is just like coming up like crazy. And the innovation that's happening in India right now is just bananas.
And across all industries or a specific few verticals that stand out?
Honestly, almost every industry, but if you digital, you guys want to talk digital. India started 20 years ago, 15 and 10 years ago. India was known for being the lower level, entry level tech, if you want to outsource your call center, right? Basic coding. But if you advance stuff, you still come to places like Silicon Valley to get the advanced tech. Now, consider this. India, and I'm going to get these numbers wrong, but I don't remember the exact number. So give me a little grace here. But I think India right now has more people with an advanced technology degree in the country, more of their citizens with that degree than the US has citizens.
Oh, I was afraid you're about to say that.
Like,
Wow.
listen, they don't all have to be, Steve Jobs or Mark Zuckerberg. They
Yeah.
just have so many of them. They're not genetically less intelligent than Americans, right? Like, you just throw that many people into it. And then, frankly, they're hungrier because
Yeah.
most of them don't have as much wealth and success and comfort as we have in our nice,
Mm.
happy first world country here. And
Right.
so, dude, they're like, we want that. We want the next level. We think we're trying to prove to themselves and the world they got this. Dude, you got a giant pile of hungry technologists who like trying to figure this thing out. And then the internet lets them, if they build something great, the whole world can find out. See,
Mm.
even 50 years ago, if you were a genius in India and you lived in a village, it didn't matter because nobody outside of
Right.
your village knew. But if you're a genius in India right now in a village, you just can get on the internet and you compete with everyone else in the world. And so just the sheer numbers game is you should pay attention to
Hmm.
India. Now, China has similar same numbers, but sadly, China's government restricts some of that free market exploration and growth, and they tell you what you're supposed to do, and they put limits on what you can build. And so China's still a player, but India is growth curve. Look at growth curves. China's on a nice steady growth curve. India is hitting the exponential curve, and they are going to blow up and be a massive player. Not in the next 5 years, but by the time you and I have our kids, and definitely by the time our grandkids are in careers in life, yeah, you want to know where the world's headed? You need to pay attention to India, build relationships in India, connect in India.
Are there any
It's,
books that you'd recommend?
oh gosh, I've read probably a dozen books on what's going on in India. And I don't, let me see if I could think of some of the names right now.
If you can't, that's okay. I'll link them.
Yeah, how about this? I'll think through some of the ones and I'll put them in. I'll put in link notes. So check the notes, and I'll send you that, and we can put in the show notes for people to check out some
Perfect.
of my favorite books on what's happening in India. Yeah, I think it's super fun. Now, I happen to have friends and clients in India. I've done business. I had a mentor who lived in Bangalore, and we did a bunch of deals together. I sadly say did because he had a heart attack and passed away, but he had a huge impact on my life.
Hmm.
Pulled me into what's going on in the Indian subcontinent and all those adventures. And man, in the process of that, it was truly amazing stuff. Yeah.
Would you want to live in India? Like, do you think that in 5 or 10 years it'll be, or is that even further away yet?
I'm not opposed to it. I had a blast when I was over there.
You've been all
Uh,
over the world, right? So
right
would you
now,
say,
yeah, I think America is one of the better places to live right now. There's probably three or four that I could put on the short list. I don't know that I would put India on the short list. First of all, let me say here's the problem when we think about India. It's massive. And the diversity and range of what's happening in India is something that you're like, oh, America's big. Yeah, we might have bigger land mass, but they have more people and they have more cultures. It's not, India was not a single thing. The British kind of drew a line on the map and said India, and it was all these warring competing nations. I think there are over 150 recognized official languages of India,
wow,
depending on the region that you're in. The average Indian that I know speaks 4 to 5 languages because all the little areas around them, there's all the different languages. So you just drive 5 hours and you're in an entirely different culture. Now, India, there's a general India that's emerging, but the back culture and even the language they speak, English kind of becomes the common one everyone can speak, but the local culture. So, what do you mean live in India? Which
hmm,
part? And still to this day, it's like you find these pockets of brilliance, but then if you want to drive to the next city, it's literally dirt roads between the cities.
hmm.
And so the infrastructure of India is still catching up. Give it someday, yes, potentially, especially if we can get flying cars. Dude, the drive from city to city in India can be brutal. 8 hours on a windy road to go 100 miles, up and down potholes. It's exhausting. And so getting around is a bit of a challenge. But then you want to talk, there's three or four cities where I'd be like, those are pretty great places.
What would
As
be
long
a
as I
couple?
leave that spot, Bangalore for tech, like if it's like the Silicon Valley of India.
Hmm.
If you want to get kind of a beach luxury, Goa area is phenomenal. There's some really cool, beautiful spots there. But I think US right now it's easier to connect and get to the rest of the world if you want to play on the global scale. It's a better hub at the
Hmm.
moment. But here's what I'd say: it depends on what life you want. There's some lives. I happen to be at a stage in my life where I'm bouncing around the world, traveling all over the place, trying to build global international connections. I should probably not go to a country where travel's a limiting factor. If that's not your goal, you're not trying to live the life I'm living, then maybe India would be awesome for some folks. So it depends what's the life you're trying to build on what's the best place to live in. Yeah.
This has been interesting.
Thanks,
You
man.
know so many things that I don't know. I'm not a globetrotter yet. Maybe someday.
Yeah, that's how it starts, man. That's how it starts.
Okay, one more question for you, and then we'll wrap up.
Sure.
Book you've read in the last or listened to in the last year that was the most interesting for you that you'd recommend to listeners?
Ooh. Okay. So I actually just posted about some of this. So I'll do this. You can email me or go to my newsletter. I put these in the newsletter and I
Perfect.
sent this stuff to folks and said, yeah, this is some of that. So remember, I read so much. People ask me, like, okay, well, what actually are the best things that you read and what should we do here and all that kind of stuff. So for that, I put a post together for the best business books and the best novels. Because, oh, by the way, I read novels, quite a bit of novels, and I strongly recommend that to people. I think business books are great, or any personal development books, history, all that cool stuff. Those are great for improving my intelligence or strategy. But if you want to build emotional intelligence, character, maturity, a novel does that more powerfully.
Hmm.
And I see a lot of very smart leaders who don't have the inner life and health. Man, the emotional journey a novel takes you through has much more impact. The creativity, understand. You want to understand India? Yeah, you should read some technical stuff. You know, you maybe should read some good novels about life in India, and you immerse yourself in what it actually feels like over there. That might be more valuable for you than getting the latest economic factors from India. So
Interesting.
that being said, here's the best business book I read was $100 Million Offers by Alex Hormozy. Genius book on how to actually create the kind of offers, like here's what we sell and here's the guarantee and the package and the promotion and all this stuff. Like he didn't just give you the concept, he showed you templates and gave you examples, and by the end of the book you can upgrade. The customers love it more and you make more. It was one of the best books I've read in years. $100 Million Offers by Alex Hormozy. And then for the novels, man, I read this super cool fantasy time loop novel called Mother of Learning. A guy gets stuck in a loop every month, repeats, and there's some
Hmm.
sort of epic crisis. I don't want to give away the spoiler, but there's a crisis coming to the land and he's got to figure out how to do it. He doesn't know how he got stuck in the time loop or what to do, but he decides he's going to use it to develop his skills, figure out the secret plot, hunt everybody down, and he gets a month to go learn and play, and then it all resets. And he's got to figure out how to save the world and stop the time loop. And it is so creative and so cool. And his personal journey, like the revelations by the time he finishes and what he thought was going on and what really, I can't say more without spoilers. Mother of
Okay.
Learning was just brilliant. I don't know how to say the author's name. It's like Domagoj Kermake. I think he's a Russian guy. Maybe he's not Russian. Apologize, Domagoj.
That'll help. That'll help. If you see the book and you can't pronounce the author, you
Brilliant.
got the
I've
right
never
one.
met that author, but Mother of Learning and $100 Million Offers, those two are my favorites from last year.
Awesome. Very good. Scott, thank you so much for your time. Anybody who's listening, if you have a company and you want your customers to feel like you the way they feel about Chick-fil-A,
Mm.
Swoz Consulting is the right play for you. If you've got a place in your career where you know the next step is necessary, you don't know how to do that, or you could use some help, same story. Talk to Scott.
Thanks, brother.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. We'll do another call someday. There's more pockets in here. I have some notes that we'll touch on another time.
Come on, man. This was fun. Let's do it.
Thanks for your time, Scott. Take care.